Let's start with you, Josh. The same-sex marriage decision. I think we know by now the president maybe was going to make this on his own before the election, but Joe Biden forced him to do it. Now that the dust has cleared a little bit, let's figure out what we can say is for sure at the end of this. So just jump in somewhere on that.
Yeah, well, John, we know this is a very risky decision for the White House. The president is a very risk-averse politician. I think we've seen over the past 3 years, they don't like to get too much out in front of some big issues. This is a very, very big issue. People have a lot of passion about gay marriage. And when you look at the political impact of it, I think in the end it's a wash, but it's a very volatile wash because you have parts of the coalition, the Obama coalition, young voters, college-educated voters. They agree with him. They were looking for him to come out a while ago when it came to gay marriage. But you also have Rust Belt voters, these undecided voters that the Obama team is convinced they can peel away from Mitt Romney. And these are the types of voters that prevented them from coming out in favor of gay marriage. They're worried that this could be an issue that pushes some of these voters to Mitt Romney's camp.
Sure, you just spent a lot of time in Indiana.
Yes.
Covering the Lugar race. What's your sense of how Indiana's gone from the president's probably his battleground map, but the Midwestern sensibility?
Right.
What's your sense of how this lands in those voters?
Well, I think the economy is still the number one issue. I was in Indiana. I was also in Pennsylvania and southwestern Pennsylvania, which is really kind of the heart of where a lot of these voters, the president and Mitt Romney, are going to fight for over the next 6 months or so. And I think a lot of these voters really don't give a hoot about gay marriage right now. They really just care about the economy over and over again. So in many ways, Josh called this a risky decision. I'm not quite sure how risky it was, because anyone who is so against gay marriage that it would change their mind on the president, I don't think they would have voted for him anyway. And I think the people that the presidential candidates really fight over, the suburban, frankly, white women, they don't care about gay marriage right now. This is not their number one issue. They're worried about getting their kids to carpool, picking their kids up from school, the economy, and they pay attention the last 2 weeks of an election. And this is so far from that right now.
There was an interesting quote at the end of Jeff Zeleny piece in the Times today of a Republican voter at a Romney event saying, I don't care about this, and plus, I don't know what my grandchildren will be, which I thought was an interesting way to think about this issue. Aaron, where do you come down on this, and do you talk a little bit about Romney's position? He's obviously against same-sex marriage. He reiterated that position, but then seems to have moved on. What do you think he'll actually do?
I think it's remarkable because just 8 years ago we were talking about a presidential election where President Bush, and some people agree or disagree with this, but President Bush was supposed to have won that race based on the votes of values voters, so-called values voters. Now, of course, the economy wasn't as big of an issue back then. It was more of a foreign policy time, but even then the Iraq War was not front of mind. There wasn't as much clouding the issue matrix. I think that Romney's response to this has been very interesting. He basically said, this is my position. Let's talk about something else now. And I think that that's probably a smart strategy because this isn't something that's so clearly in Republicans' favor right now that it's a no-brainer. And a guy like Romney doesn't need to spend time relitigating something that the Republican Party may not be on the right side of in 2 years' time, in 4 years' time, something that could come back to bite them in the future.
So it seems like Romney's not going to be talking about it very much. And the president, the reason this was a bit of a mix-up, not only did they not want it to look like Joe Biden was leading on this issue and not the president, but this was supposed to be roll out the campaign week for the president, right?
And I thought it was fascinating that Joe Biden, who is essentially the unofficial emissary to the blue-collar, working-class parts of the country, he's the guy that comes out in favor of it and in a very open way, whereas President Obama, whose base is much more comfortable with gay marriage, he's the one who's kind of leading from behind, if you will, on this issue. And I think that's fascinating to read the coverage today, where Vice President Biden came to apologize to President Obama for being out in front of this. I think there's some real embarrassment that it was Biden who is not the guy you would think would be out in front on this issue. He's the one leading, and Obama seems to be being dragged along on it.
Isn't it all a little too well orchestrated? Isn't the timing just a little too questionable? It just worked out so well. The Republican primaries died down. They could really use this week to seize on that issue. I'm not accusing the White House of misrepresenting, but I think it's very convenient that Joe Biden said this, and this rollout came out right before Obama goes to Hollywood and raises $15 million in the most gay-friendly community in the country.
True, although there was real panic when Biden said this, in part because the president was launching his campaign on Saturday and setting up those careful themes. $25 million worth of ads on Monday, not talking about gay marriage or same-sex marriage, and then they have to deal with
The
this.
thing that we have to remember too is that Obama's been raising money from the gay community for a long time too. This wasn't the first time that he's done that. I think I saw a story where 1 of 6 of his major
Your paper
bundlers,
reported that.
yeah, or
I don't
one
know
of it-
how they figured that out, but
1 in 6 of his major campaign bundlers come from the gay and lesbian community, which I think is a remarkable commentary on what that community means to politics today. The other thing that I think is interesting here is the ongoing relationship between Biden and the president. The president went on TV, went on Good Morning America, and basically said Biden went over his skis a little bit, which I thought was an interesting phrase for that. But we've seen these kind of clips over the years where Biden does something, and here's Obama over here. He kind of rolls his eyes a little bit. So you almost wonder whether these guys are always on the same page, and maybe we're giving into our desire for some kind of a clash between the president and the vice president. But I think it's interesting to watch them work together.
Well, that's right. Well, and as Josh mentioned, the eastern part of Ohio, western part of Pennsylvania, where Biden is, you talk to, strategists on the ground of the Democratic Party, they rely on Biden to talk to that group of voters, and so that's why David Axelrod says sort of, your blessings are also your curses, which is that Biden effusiveness, whatever it is, the mix of his heart that appeals to folks that are kind of blue-collar workers is also the thing that tumbles over and gets him out of
The other thing that I think is interesting here is that Biden, when he was picked as the vice president, and even before that, his reputation was he's a gaffe machine. The thought was, this is a risky pick. He's going to do something stupid. He's going to embarrass the campaign. He really hasn't done anything to knock the campaign off its message in the 4 years since then, until arguably, depending on how you think this all unfolded, until this episode over the weekend.
Right.
I think one of the most telling nuggets came in today's New York Times when an anonymous senior Obama campaign official made the case that Biden had actually been arguing against coming out for gay marriage in private White House meetings. That he's not. This was just this random. I mean, this really was a gaffe. He was just kind of improvising on the spot, which puts Biden in a very bad light. And to me, it suggests that there is this real tension between Obama and Biden, despite what the public appearances of or get along great, they're best buddies, and we knew they weren't particularly close from the get-go, and it was kind of a marriage of convenience in 2008. And I think if Biden continues to be making these inopportune gaffes and ticks off the president's top campaign staff, we could actually we might even be hearing speculation about a change at the number 2 spot.
I think Mark Leibovich had an excellent story in the New York Times, right? I think it was Tuesday morning, really going through the Obama-Biden relationship. And he opened with this really great anecdote about how originally in the president's White House Correspondents' Dinner speech, he was supposed to make some joke about dropping Joe Biden from the ticket, and then the president crossed it out. He didn't even want to go there because he was just afraid it would add fuel or any kind of speculation to the fire.
On the other hand, that would have been a great way to make us all stop talking about it. If the president's up there joking about it, then obviously it's not going to happen, right?
Right. I know there's a lot of cross currents with the Biden thing. What's planned, what's not, what's a true message, because the president's thrown a couple of those brushback pitches before with comedy, kind of saying, settle down, Joe.